Hello, everybody. Welcome to the channel. I know there's a lot of new faces because I already see you in the chat. I'm Katherine D. Graham. I'm a fantasy author, obviously, since we're here talking about SPFBO, which, by the way, how are you supposed to say that acronym?
SPFBO, SPFBO. I say SPFBO to remind myself how to type it every time, but SPFBO is 100%. Everybody calls it SPFBO.
Yeah,
I like that. I've wondered that myself.
Mm-hmm. I'm not afraid to ask the newbie questions, being here as one of the first timers this year. But yeah, I'm a fantasy author and editor and book reviewer, and today we launched into this brand new adventure. And if you were up at the crack of dawn and you know Andrew, you may have been on Andrew's live to kick this whole day off. Thank you for organizing that, Andrew. And to everybody who's watching, if you were one of the hosts, thank you for being up so early.
You know, I have such a giant sense of guilt sometimes for responsibility, and I didn't want anybody to say, but I didn't know. And so I was blazing all over all socials to say, we're going to be up. Here's the hour. And I'm like, well, I don't know what time that is. Well, one, Google it. Two, here's your time. Because I want everybody to get in. I want everybody I know to get in. And I don't want somebody to wake up 3 hours later and find out that, well, it filled up in 41 minutes. Or was it 42? Yeah. So
yeah, because last year it was several hours is what we were talking about before we went live.
And I missed it by 2 hours. So if I had been entering last year, I would have missed it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. So our hearts go out to the people who did miss their alarm this morning. I think this might be a record fast fill up from what I've been reading on Facebook. But yeah, we got Andrew on. We have K.E. Andrews on. We have M on. And we have one other author who may be joining us in just a few minutes. If you're watching live, let us know where you're joining from and if you've entered SPFBO, or if you are tuning in because you want to learn more about it for next year, because we're going to be talking a little bit about both of those just casually. So why don't we go around and talk about how many times we've done SPFBO and why we decided to throw our hats back in the ring this year if you've done this before, or why you decided to start with it this year. Em, you want to kick us off?
Sure. So this is my very first year. Thank you. I don't even remember deciding to enter. I found it just under a year ago, and I hadn't published my novel yet, but I knew it was coming out in a few months. And I joined the Facebook group, and I just thought, oh, I definitely want to do that and get this book in there when it opens up again. So I kind of watched it all year and read previous finalists and winners and stuff. And it's just an awesome contest. So I'm excited. So I'm total newbie here. Total newbie.
Oh, yeah. So I'm not the only newbie, I know. HC says she submitted the wrong cover on theirs. Yeah, I'm sure that happens. I had so many tabs pulled up because during Andrew's live, he was going through, make sure you have, the EPUB, make sure you have the cover, make sure you have the Goodreads link up, make sure that you have the Amazon link up. So I had so many tabs and I was like, okay, I'm ready.
That was me this morning.
Hey, Edith.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi.
So good to have you.
It's so good to be here. How are you guys?
Good.
Yes, I see. Link is on from Australia. Wow. Thanks for tuning in. It's been a long day. And Mike, hey Mike, John. So many good viewers on. Yes. So
when you do post in the chat with the name that you're publishing under.
Mm-hmm.
So we know to recognize your books when we see them over the year.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, or better yet, post what book you're putting in. If you've got a pretty link for it, like books to read / something, you can drop it and I'll pull it up on the screen. So it'll be recorded for the people watching the replay too. But Em was just saying how this is her first year, like it is mine. jumping into this adventure. How about you, Ke? I know this is not your first time.
It still feels always anxious, like just an anxious ride. But I do think this year was a whole lot better because I don't remember if he posted like the mock-up form last year. But this was super helpful because it was like I felt like there was more last year we had to submit. But it was really good for me, my type A, just knowing this is what I all need. So this is my second year. I submitted my fantasy novel last year, made it to semifinals for Book Nest, who is unfortunately no longer doing this year. But so I submitted my Cottagecore Necromancy fantasy, which I kind of was, publication date was around when SPFBO was happening. So I was like, okay, so the goal is to get it in and done by SPFBO time so I can enter it. Otherwise, I won't have anything else to enter for a couple of years. So that put a little pressure on me, and I'm so glad it all worked out. So that's what I submitted, and it comes out on Saturday. So, yes, second time.
When did you start writing that one, though?
This one I started writing in March.
Yeah.
And I didn't know when it would be done. And then I was like,
Wow.
oh, well, I guess it's going to be done. So, yeah, this is the quickest I've written like a full-length novel. Not 10 years.
Yeah.
Not 10 years. So, yeah, this is it's different than what I normally write. So I want to see how far it goes. But, you know, Cozy won this year or last year. So I don't know. I like my chances.
So Melissa says last year we had to have a Moby file. And if you're watching this as an author who hasn't done SPFBO yet, this year we did not have to have a Moby file. We only had to have one of the generic EPUB files. Yeah, I don't even think there was a spot for a Moby file this year.
No, that was replaced with the AI questions.
Oh,
yes.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Those are
you
big
can't
ones.
have had the AI write the book. You had to do it yourself. Actually, I don't know if that was in the rules, but I know it's the AI cover.
Yeah, because they do a cover contest, which I'm looking forward to as well, because it's always fun.
Yeah. And you know what? That makes total sense to at least, I mean, you weren't just qualified for having AI art. I mean, mine is I photo bash from assets, but I don't need to be in the contest because the point of the contest is not about the author. At that point, it's about us showcasing the artists who are looking for more work. And there are those who have books in the contest that maybe they're already thinking of a new cover and they're looking for an artist and they're going to meet somebody. So
Exactly. John says, my book doesn't come out for another 2 months, so I'll enter next year. Just make sure you're there up at the crack of dawn.
My guess is half an hour next year, if that.
Me too.
You know,
I saw somebody suggest they could do groups. Like there's a window for 100 people at this hour, window for 100 people this hour, so that way it catches different time zones if they're asleep. But that would be cool.
fair.
But still, you got like 30 seconds.
I think Mark likes the chaos. I don't know.
More work on Mark's end. I mean, Disney gets away with it, right? I just finished planning a Disney trip, and it was like, be up at 7 a.m. Eastern, 6 a.m. in order to book dining reservations. I'm like, okay, well, if they can get away with it, surely. How about you, Edith? How did you come about doing SPFBO this year? Have you done it before?
I have not done it before. I don't know who this person was, but someone emailed me 2 weeks ago saying they had seen Trials of Fire and Rebirth, which is a book that came out last year. And they were like, is this book self-published? If so, you should enter it into SPFBO. And as far as I can tell, this person is not associated with the contest. But so then I went and looked on the site, and I actually recognized it from Kay's Instagram page because you have a pinned post that shows that you were a semifinalist. And I was like, oh, okay, this is a legitimate thing. And then I saw that it closed in 9 hours last year. So yes, I set an alarm this morning. And that was I was pretty shocked when you messaged me, Katherine, and were like, oh, I see you got in. I'm like, wait, I just did that. How did you know? Wow. It was
that's actually a really good point. I'll pull this up on the screen. So right now there is a tentative phase 1 release with whose books have made it in and what blogs they're assigned to. It says at the top, subject to change. In case some of them don't meet the guidelines or somebody knows somebody. Andrew, you might be able to speak more to that than me, but
I mean, I mean, it takes time for him to get a hold of people. If people submitted at 5 a.m. and they went to work, they're not home, and he has questions for them like, "Is your book 2 a standalone, or is it part of a series?" That they can't find that out until they get a hold of the person. But there's also some cool stats at the top of that page too, including like, is there an audiobook version? It's cool. Cool site to check out.
I feel like he got all this information out so quickly compared to last time. I feel like I was always like, what category were we in? I think I only found out through the Goodreads like list, and then that was like, oh, it's on this blog. So, but again, that was last year's newbie me. So
yeah. If you're watching the replay, the link is in the description box already. If you're watching the live, you can click on it in the chat. But don't get discouraged if your book's not up there quite yet, because they did build a reserve list and they've already switched some out, so still a chance right now. Yeah, so Andrew, you're sort of the veteran here.
I mean, I've only done it one other year too. So me and Katie both entered last year and met each other through the Discord. In fact, maybe we might have met over on Twitter, and I think I invited you into the Discord.
I think it was on Instagram. Yeah, I think that's. Yeah. I forgot. Oh no, I think I was following you because you were on Catherine's channel one time, and I was like, "Oh, I'm going to follow you." Yeah, and then that's how we ended up in this Discord.
I was watching it for about the 6 months beforehand because I had published my last book, Thrice, the November before that. And then was learning about SPFBO through Bookborn, who was doing a follow along in the same way that Cassidy is now doing hers, right? She followed a follow along and is now a judge. Well, the year before, Bookborn was following along all the finalists and then became a judge. And so I learned all about it. And then I popped in, late, 2 hours late for the 9-hour window that was last year to enter Thrice, which was semifinalist as well. So that's that one. Yay. It's a Slavic fantasy, kind of a lone wolf and cub story, and then during SPFBO is when I published my the first 2 books in my big epic fantasy, which is Deathless Beast, which is my SPFBO entrance this year, and then book 2 is already available, which is Bone Shroud.
Yeah, so you don't have to wait.
And there was a bit of a. We're not going to talk about it here, but it was released. This book was actually released as 3 books. I quickly realized my marketing information was wrong because I based it on 2019 and everything had changed because of this weird thing called COVID. I don't know. And so I immediately pivoted and re-released it 3 months later as a single book, and no looking backwards after that. So,
yeah. Dean, Sue says,
thanks, Sue.
Series.
She's my mother-in-law.
Oh, it's good when your mother-in-law says it's good.
Yep. Well, and my father-in-law's read each of them like 3 times. Those are his travel books.
That's great.
That's nice.
Yeah. Melissa, this is her 3rd year. Woo!
This is a true veteran.
JE entered my upcoming Pacific Island inspired fantasy. You go. Oh, don't say that. I was actually reading some people in the Discords today on different ones, because it seems like this is being talked about everywhere, say that actually the lesser known books seem to do better than some of the better known books in past runs, I guess. But yeah.
Everybody loves a sleeper hit.
Yes.
Well, discovery is part of what's so fun.
Oh, yes.
Yes. So for those who don't know, who might be hopping on and they're just like, what even is this? Why is this blowing up my Twitter today to the point where the hashtag Goodreads is on the top trending on Twitter today? Would anybody like to say a little bit about what SPFBO is, like what the purpose of it is, as opposed to any of the hundreds of other book contests that are out there?
Take it away, Katie.
Oh, okay. Well, it's for self-published books, started by Mark Lawrence. I'm almost through his interview with Tori and Chago. I'm just so slow. But he said he created it just to kind of give self-published books a chance to, be front and center where normally they wouldn't be, because I guess when he first started, like it wasn't a very common thing compared to TradPub. So it's just a free contest to kind of gain publicity. And so there's no money, unfortunately, which would be nice. But it's the friends you make along the way and the fact that a bunch of blogs are looking at your book and whoever else is interested in the contest. So there's 300 books, 10 blogs, whittled down over, oh my gosh, when were finalists chosen? I want to say
November 15th or
Okay.
November 1st, it might be.
So whatever June 1st to November is, it's whittled down to the 10 finalists. And then they just kind of go from there, picking their top ones. And winner gets a selfie stick award and a coin. And then if you get semifinalists, you get a nice little sticker. So
Yes.
Which you can put on your books. Like on the
Yes.
backs of your books.
yes.
There's actually there's so many books,
I don't
and
know.
Zach worked so hard. Yeah.
Yeah.
Zach
So
worked
Zach
really
set that
hard
up. Yeah.
compiling this. Yeah, it's a list of all the books broken down by which blogs have been assigned right now, of course, subject to change. And you can toggle between which ones are audiobooks, which ones are KU. So if you're watching and you're like, I want to start reading before the bloggers, you have 2 weeks. Run. Get as many as you can done.
You can also, he's got the last 3 years listed up there too in different links, and you can go back and see what each blog had and start way over analyzing everything on this blog. Every year has always picked this type. And so it's a good website for that. If you want to be semi-obsessive, Zach Argyle's site is great because you can just refer to it to see what gets knocked off, right? Because he'll put something out, it'll go gray and push to the very end, and then it'll slowly get whittled down. If something makes a semifinalist, it'll get popped to the front, and then as a semifinalist. So you can just obsess over that if you don't want to keep 10 blog windows up at all times and be constantly refreshing all 10 of them to see what they are, as some people do. Totally.
Oh, and then later you'll just be on Mark's blog every single day seeing when your name
Yep.
either turns red or green. So if it turns red, then you're probably not going to move forward. And
Yep.
I mean, sometimes you get a review, sometimes you don't. That's kind of hit or miss. If you do get a review, awesome. But when you see your name turn green, it's really exciting because it means you moved on to semifinalists, and then it gets progressively more anxious. Just waiting, because I didn't know I made semifinalists until Andrew was like, "Hey, did you see?" I was like, "What? What's happening?" So yes.
And Melissa's got the name of her book, Path of the Warrior. So you can check that out. That should be on that link too that Zach put together. And all the books for those of us up here on the screen, they're all linked in the description box. Andrew's Deathless Beast. KE has a brand new book. So if you go to get hers today, it will technically be a pre-order. But
which would be good.
To get it.
I just
Yeah.
finally
Orders are good.
realized how to do physical copy pre-orders because I'm super smart. So 3 days before it comes out, you can order physical copies now.
You'll have
Yay.
to teach me how to do that.
I think it's only through Ingram Sparks. So I
Oh.
did that, and then pre-orders just showed up. So I'm like, okay, I guess that's how you do it. Because I saw people doing it, and I didn't ask. So
That makes sense.
here we are.
Yeah. And then Edith, which of your beautiful books have you brought on? I know I've got the link in the description box, but I've seen so many books today that my brain is like mush.
No problem. I've entered A Magical Imperative. It's a book that just came out this year, and it's a start of a series. The book someone messaged me about, Trial of Fire and Rebirth, is kind of a standalone, but it's in a series, and I was worried that it might get disqualified. So I didn't want to go to that one.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's an urban fantasy that I guess its niche thing is that it's set in Japan, where I worked for about a year.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I saw that one of the judges lives in Japan, and I thought of you. He's in Fukuoka, and I was like, oh, wow. I don't know that either of us got her, but.
No, yeah, I think I have Esme, the weather wax report.
Mhm.
But,
Oh, I do too.
yes, I saw yours.
So, and Em, tell us a little bit about your book that you've got in this year.
Oh, my book is called The Woods. It is a fairy tale retelling of Little Red Riding Hood. Kind of dark. It came out Like 9 months ago. It's a standalone.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exciting. Mine's a standalone too. I decided to throw my debut out there. Sorry, debut. I have at the Vow That Twisted Fates going out there. I was like, okay, a little confidence, and here we go.
Why did you pick that one for your debut book in the contest?
I felt like it was the most, this sounds weird for somebody who's super tiny. I say this with the utmost humility I can. The most acclaimed of any of the books that I have. So I was like, if I'm going to put a book out there, this one has the most reviews and the most feedback. So that was sort of my mindset going with it. And I feel like it establishes the kind of books I write pretty well versus some of the later books where it sort of targets in on different aspects of the universe, even though the series are totally different. Edith, were you over there on the JET program?
Yes. Is that yeah, I was teaching English at a couple different high schools in northern Japan, Hachinohe, which people don't, I think a lot of people in the US don't think of Japan as having a ton of snow, but in northern Japan there is a ton of snow. The highways have like 10-foot tall walls of snow. So it was a really fun year.
Yeah. So really, for the new people, I will exclude myself from this because I went into this feeling a little more prepared thanks to those of you who shared your experience with us in the past. What tips would you have for somebody who's planning to do this next year from someone who just did it for the first time today? Because I think it'd be really cool to see your perspective and then see what Katie and Andrew would add to that.
I mean, definitely set an alarm so you're there the moment it opens. I think that was the only thing I really did. Yeah.
Yeah.
Having the form available before today was really helpful. So I went in yesterday and I made a document with all the links in it, and I checked over my EPUB and I made sure I had the right cover, and I opened them all up so that when I went into my quick access this morning, the 2 correct files would be the most recently opened, and I wouldn't have to go through the 47 books I have on my computer called the Woods ebook version, whatever,
Yeah.
So like knowing exactly what questions there were going to be was super helpful. So I would say just like take the time to get prepared in advance and then set the alarm.
Yeah. And then I would add that, on top of having all the files together that we mentioned earlier in the video and like the links lined up so that you just like click through, like Andrew said, I wish I had thought to lower the price of my book before launch day for SPFBO, because right now it's still listed at $3.99. It literally just ended KU 2 days ago, and I was like, so it's not on KU and it's full price right now. I'm going to take it down to a lower price. So if you're watching the replay in June, it will come down to a lower price. But I was just thinking, man, I did not plan that right. I should have left it in KU or something past today.
That is a good idea. Good point. I didn't think about it at all.
Me either, at all. Thank you.
Well, there's just so many readers. I wasn't expecting this level of connection because in my head, I knew it was different than other contests, but I sort of felt like, oh, well, it's a contest. You submit your book and then you go and you just don't even think about it until the results come out. I was not expecting to connect with all these readers and bloggers and authors and people like, hey, send me your link, send me this. And I was just like, wow, I wish I had prepared for that so that more people would have had access to my book than it is right this second. JE's on as another newbie. I found the most value out of the community. Absolutely.
Yeah.
The Discord really helps, I think.
It does.
Yeah.
And if you're not somebody who gets on Discords, you don't have to dive into all 20 of them. I can barely keep track of one of them. But it's just a forum. It's like a 90s forum. If you're a child of the 90s, it's not that much difference. It just has more bells and whistles. But part of the weakness of the indie community is we're kind of invisible to anybody who can't see inside. And once you're inside, you walk behind the curtain, and the whole Emerald City's there, and there's a horse of many colors and all that stuff. But until you can get into the door, you can't see it, and it's not because the indie community is trying to hide, but it just kind of gets gated by other sources. And so a Discord, any indie Discord, any book Discord will get you linked to friends in other Discords, and then it all snowballs from there. But until then, I spent all of the beginning of last year just trying to find people to hang out with, and it was really hard. And then I found the Discord through SPFBO, and I was like, well, there we go. And you have friends. So
yeah. Oh, we are the Twin Tails. Yay. Congratulations. Yes. So Katie, Andrew, what would you add as far as the submission goes? Because we'll talk a little bit about what happens after this, to what Edith and Emma said of what people doing this for the first time next year should keep in mind.
Andrew, do you want to go first?
So I was on my wife's computer, and so unfortunately I had it all set up because I was setting up for the live, but I needed to make sure to log her out of her Google and log me into my Google, so I knew it would register under my name in the form. I don't know if it made a difference, but still, I just wanted to make sure you have the right Google account logged in, so that when you're submitting it, it's all kosher. It's all about removing as many hurdles as possible, and same with having an audiobook available. That's a hurdle that you can remove. Nobody ever ended up listening to my audiobook over the course of the last one, like from a judge's point of view, but to have it is nice, not only for buyers, but if a judge is a heavy audiobook listener and they say, hey, can you please send me the audiobook, you're set up to just throw it over to them. So
yeah, I guess for me, I'm not saying set the bar low as far as expectations go, but kind of remembering, even though it's a contest, everyone who's in it is just your fellow author. So it's very subjective in terms of judging. So it's very easy to say, well, why did that book get picked? Whereas I think my book's better. And it's just we're all just trying to make it. So that creates a much more welcoming, environment. And yeah, it does sting when your book doesn't, make it far, but we're all here to support each other. So building those connections and being able to say, have the fun competitive spirit, but also hey, we're really excited that you've moved on to this new phase, or oh, I'm so sorry your book got cut, we're here for you. So it's it's just building that community and just being intentional with that, with all the authors in this competition.
Because people who read indie books read a lot of books, because our books are more affordable anyway. They can buy 3 of ours for the cost of one trad ebook. So we're not competing for the same $5 bill. We're competing for the next hour, and then when they're going to finish a book and go to the next one. So that's why we're together. And honestly, you will always sell better when you say, you know what, you're right, my book's not for you, but you would really love Katie's book. Go over and check that one out. And they're like, oh, this is exactly what I want. I would much rather have a reader not be interested in my book and not read it than to have them not be interested and be forced to read it and give me a 2 or 3 star.
Yeah.
So.
The networking is really important for sure. Even after the competition, and just knowing hey, I know that author, or we were in this competition together and I've seen how their book did, and being able, like Andrew said, to promote other people, even if it's not your style of book, or it's not another judge's style of book, that kind of thing. So, and you don't know how far that'll go until it happens. So
yeah. And I was just pulling up the note about Twitter. Definitely the most activity of any of my socials today has been Twitter. How about for you, Em?
I do not have Twitter, actually.
That's why I was asking how your socials were today.
Oh, which other ones? Okay, yeah. Probably Facebook, just because I'm most active there. Yeah, I guess I should get on Twitter, huh?
I hadn't been on Twitter in over. I started a Twitter account when I first self-published, and I feel intimidated by Twitter, and so I have not been on there in over a year. And I logged in today and was like, "Whoa, I have to fix that." All this stuff's going off.
It's I have over 100 new followers. What is that?
I don't know if it was that, but
I can speak to Twitter because I quit it for a year. after like at the same, like around elections in 2020, I was like, I'm done, I'm out, and I just quit it. I didn't shut it down, but I was just gone. And I didn't get back on until I think middle of July, in the middle of SPFBO. And somebody else, I think, was either, I don't think he had been cut yet, but he was like, you know, I've been interacting with our blog, and they're really nice, you should get on there. And I'm like, oh, we're not supposed to interact with our blog, right? And he's like, no, I've been chatting with them, they're really nice people. And so I kind of lurked on, and it was refreshing because it acted as a reset for my entire Twitter feed, because I had not been on for a year, and it wasn't elections anymore. I was able to kind of cull out people silence people, mute people you don't want to talk to. And then it was also me switching from pursuing traditional over to indie. All of a sudden it was all indie, and we're all supportive of each other. And so getting onto Twitter, you can curate the heck out of it. I used to do follow for follow. And now I'm very conservative of when I actually follow someone back, because I really would love to get to the point where my followers are far exceeding what I'm following, so it's not flooding my feed as well. But it's worth getting back on because of the indie community. We're a very different circus.
Plus, Mark's on there more. Mostly, I got on there because I was like, oh, Mark Lawrence is more active on Twitter than he is. I think he has an Instagram, maybe. I don't know. Yeah. And then, of course, Facebook. But Twitter seems to be where he is a lot. So for me personally, I was like, I'm just going to stalk a little as well.
There were a lot of readers and bloggers on today. If you're catching up, like Andrew said, you've been at work all day, and now you're catching up. There were a lot of readers and bloggers who were like, drop the link to your Goodreads, drop the link to your Amazon, because they wanted to add it solely because it was going to be in SPFBO. And those are tracked on Twitter. And I know one of them, the Goodreads one, seems to be getting a lot of views. And really all that we do when we write as indies is we're looking for the connections, connecting to people that want to read our books and connecting to other authors. And this is the most enjoyment I've ever had on Twitter. It's completely changed my view of Twitter. I've always been an Instagram person, and we're streaming live to Twitter, so but no, at first it was really daunting and hard to find community, but I think once you find it, like Andrew said, it's a lot better. Absolutely. So
this is launch day, and now I've met 3 new authors I didn't know before, and it's day one.
Only day one.
Right?
It's only day one.
Only day one. Yes. June 1st is when it's probably going to really hit off. When it officially starts.
Well, we'll have the cover contest before that.
I was wondering when that started. So
I think it's pretty quickly. I feel like it's like this week they do all the settling down, and they pick all the covers, and then they put them up, and then the vote happens until June 1st.
I literally forgot they did voting for that. I think because again, last year I didn't know what was going on. I was like, okay, I joined this. That's nice. I don't know. And then,
and it was a problem last year because they had people who were multi poking. And so they ended up I forget, they were going to discuss how they're going to do it differently this year, but
So speaking of next and what happens next, for those, there's been a lot of speculation circling around. And I know there's no real right or wrong answer here. So just really opening it up to your thoughts on how to think about this, really. When you look at the list, Mark's list that I shared earlier, there are so many good authors and good books. And I mean, big name authors on the list. It's a little overwhelming, if I'm being perfectly honest.
Yes.
And I know I've seen some people say, oh, I'm glad I didn't enter this year because I would have been up against them. But I'm sort of wondering how you guys feel and how you plan on going through the next 5 months of waiting with that, just as an honest question. Oh, thank you so much. Yes.
Well, it's funny. I was talking to my sister-in-law about entering just like an hour ago, and she was like, oh, are you nervous? Are you excited to see if you make it to semifinals? And I was like, honestly, I'm just dialing it down because I can't be nervous for 5 months. Like, that's just not going to work. But yeah, definitely today was all exciting.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely big stacked list. Of course, like again, last year I really didn't have an indie community, so none of the names really meant anything to me. Now, because I've been around a little bit longer, like I think I knew at least 40-ish ones, and I read at least 10 of them. So I'm like, okay, I know who this is. And there's some I'm like, in my kind of category, I'm like, okay, this will I don't know. Not saying I don't like my chances, but I'm like, well, I won't feel bad if I don't make it because I know these books. I at least know these books. I'm glad I'm glad I'm not in a category with Kian, though. Is that how you say his name? For the 11th cycle. I saw that one. I was like, oof. Good luck. Good luck.
But it's
guys.
apples and oranges, though.
Exactly, because even the popular books don't do very well sometimes, and it's at this point it's like it's really hard to tell. Like you could start placing your bets, but it's really anyone's game, which is the fun and exciting part, but also the real fearful part. Because it's like, I don't know. So yeah, it's both nerve-wracking for me and exciting just to see like how many big books are there, but also some really cool ones that are maybe a little bit more under the radar. But I think it's a solid list this year.
Yeah, and I agree, Melissa. And it's gonna be, but in a good way.
That's my faction.
Fantasy Faction has the most books that I have personally read, and 2 that I have either edited or beta read, I think, unless I've got one of them switched. And I was like, I remember editing this person's book. And I'm glad my book is not in the blog. but no, seriously, I think sometimes competing against the best is almost better because then it means more if you do place. And then if you don't place, it's like I know that I've lost to the best.
That's how it was for me last year with Book Nest, because Chiago was in my category too. So it was like down to us and I think maybe like 2 other people. So it was like, oh, this is hard because I really want to win, but I'm also happy if you win. So it's that fun kind of contentiousness of like, hope you don't kill me in this competition, but just still being happy when someone wins. So when you get down to the wire, it's like, ooh, this is tough.
It was you, Chiago, and The Blinding Tempest by Stephen Rudy. Stephen Rudy?
That's right.
Stephen Rudy, yeah.
Fantasy Faction as well, yes. So, Em, how are you feeling about it, being a fellow newbie?
Yeah, I think I haven't really totally processed that aspect of it yet, right? Like right now, I'm not super nervous because I'm not super like, oh my God, I'm going to win, right? Like, I'm just excited to be here and to meet people, like for me, this is so much about the community. It's about getting all the eyes on my book, like what we've been talking about, all the opportunities, people putting together lists and your book is on it because you're in the contest, like that's just amazing. So right now I'm so much more focused, I guess, on like just taking advantage of all of the connections I can make with authors and readers and, visibility I can bring to the book. So, I mean, if it makes it through to the next round, then we'll have to have this conversation again. Andrew was talking about how obsessive you want to be. I haven't decided. I am definitely an A-type person. I could make all of the spreadsheets. I could, go overboard, but I'm like, I don't want to start there. I want it to be at least like by accident,
Absolutely. Yes. And how about you, Andrew? How do you feel going in this year? Is it different than how you felt going in last year?
Yeah, well, I'm in a very different blog this time. Last year I was in Before We Go blog, and that was scary. I was up against, I'm not even going to name the names. I don't want to scare anybody who's like in their groups, but I had like 4 big heavy hitters. I was like, well, there's the game. I'm not making finalist. Can I at least make semi-finalist? And I did, but I didn't. But I was on pins every time a new blog came up from our blog. I was scared. And then you go through waves of weeks where you're like, hey, whoa, I'm gonna do pretty good. I think I can do it. And other times you're like, no, this is not gonna happen. And so yeah, you're gonna go through a lot of waves. And but the best advice I can give is keep going. So it's middle of July and you're cut. You get 24 hours to have a pity party, because that's the same. It's the same rule if you get a rejection from an agent. It's the same rule when you get bad news. You get 24 hours of pity party, and then get back out there, including in the community of SPFBO. There's a lot of people who will get cut, and they will just disappear, and you don't ever see them again. And it's not you don't ever see them again because they stopped writing book or they wrote more books and you just don't see them. It's because they quit, and don't quit. Stay involved, because the fact that you get cut and you still put on a stiff upper lip and you still show up at Twitter and you're still in conversations, the bloggers notice that and go, you know what? And maybe not the person who actually, maybe another blogger from the same blog of your own blog might say, you know what? I'm going to read the book anyway, even though it was cut. And now you have an unsolicited blog post that shows up because you stay involved. You know, you got to want it, so want it. And I'm not a type 1 personality. I'd rather sit around and make cookies. But don't give up and don't disappear, because that's admitting defeat, and we're not here to be defeated. We're here to write more books. So
absolutely, this is a great question. I'd say based on today, and I don't have the experience, like I said, newbie. Based on today alone, the publicity that I've gotten and the connections I've made have been worth entering, and it cost me nothing.
Yep.
You know, the book's already published; it's already out there. We've thrown it out to the absolute wolves who will tear it to shreds if they don't like it on Amazon anyway. So we might as well put it out here and introduce it to people who are the perfect niche for it, really.
And just because you're cut doesn't mean like you get taken down from the website or anything. Like you're still there. Your name is still, you know, visible. So like, you know, with any kind of thing, even though someone else has cut it, you could be someone else's cup of tea and be like, hey, that book looks interesting. Or, you know, sometimes people get together and say, hey, this book didn't get reviews. Or, you know, maybe as nice of reviews as some other books. And maybe let's read that one and support this person. So, I mean, really, you don't know. And especially if you get cut, it means you have more time to read and less time to worry about what's happening. So there's that.
And if you're cut, you now have carte blanche to contact blogs that were in the competition. So say you got assigned to Fantasy Faction, but you were really hoping to get into Before We Go blog, and you get cut. So go contact Before We Go blog and say, hey, I was cut, but I'm interested in a review, and they'll tell you what their rules are for submitting reviews that you didn't think you had it in you to submit to Before We Go. Well, you do have it in you, and now you're out of the competition, so go get it. What's the literal worst that could happen? They say no. No worse off than before. So
yeah, and like Fantasy Book Critic already has their review guidelines up on their website, because when they were assigned to me, the first thing I did was click on them and be like, what kind of blog is this? Went through and looked, and I was like, okay, they look very serious. I'm not intimidated. No, I'm not intimidated at all. But no, they've got their submission guidelines, and I'm sure some of the others do too. And they also have things they prefer, and that helped me set up. Like, I think Katie, I can't remember who you mentioned, that does a lot of hers on YouTube, her reviews, instead of on a written blog. But
there's four.
Ori does a lot of hers on. I don't know if that was that one or if was it Becky M? Maybe?
I don't know. One of them said that they love audiobooks, and it made me think about what Andrew said is, when this is all over, I'm not in her blog, but when this is all over, maybe I could reach out to her and offer her one of my audiobook reviewer codes if she's interested, based on other things that she said she liked. I mean, I don't want to randomly contact bloggers that don't look like they're a good fit, which ties into the question I'm about to ask you guys. But there's definitely a couple on there that I was like, oh, I wish that they would be able to read my book, because they're just perfect for the book. Your book is not going to be the best fit for every person or every reviewer or every judge in a contest. And so my next question was really tackling the imposter syndrome that's going to come, which ties into sort of what Andrew was saying. In the end, there's going to be one winner, and there are 5 of us on this screen, and we're all good friends. So when that time comes, imposter syndrome is something that I've personally struggled with a lot, and would love to hear your input on how you can get in a good mental space before that happens. Setting yourself up to know, okay, I know what blog I'm in. I know what they like. I know that my book may or may not. I could go either way. So if it doesn't go the way I hope it would, I'm not going to be devastated. But what other points would you have for authors to maybe prepare themselves a little bit?
Hmm.
You know,
That's kind of where, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say that's for me personally, I set my expectation low. Like last year, again, it was a mixture of just not knowing and then also being like, for my own mental health, I'm just not going to like follow everything for quite some time. I'm not going to obsess about it until I made some my finalist. And then I was like, okay, now I really care. So really kind of setting that bar low of like, you know, not saying, oh, this book won't do well, but, you know, just saying, you know, if it wins, it wins. If it doesn't, okay. For me, that was just kind of my mantra. I've also not really looked into my faction yet either, although I did see they gave oh my gosh, what was the book that just won? I'm blanking. Olivia Atwater's book. I know her name. Small Miracles. There we go. Came back. Brain is slightly working. So like I looked and saw what they had, so I'm like, okay, that gives me a little bit more confidence, but just also just reminding myself like we're all in this together. It's all hit or miss with books. And last year I thought my book was pretty good until afterwards I was like, man, there's so many spelling errors and stuff that's in here, but it still made semifinals. So that was my key to hold on to. It's like, you know, it's people are gonna say what they're gonna say and like what they're gonna like, and so there's nothing I can do about it except for just be confident in what I've written.
Typos are fixable. You can put out a second version or a second edition of a book.
But they had already read it by that point. So I was just like, ooh. It's like, oh, they saw that. But she still gave me a really nice review, which was nice. So
how about you, Em? What do you think?
I mean, we're all storytellers here, right? So one of the things that I do is I tell myself stories about things, right? So, you know, something happens and you go, oh, well, that means this, right? And you create this whole like narrative. I don't know if the rest of you do that, but I think trying to avoid doing that is very helpful. And that's something that I practice. So rather than, oh, nobody bought my book or my book got cut, that means blah, 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 right? Whole story. It doesn't mean anything. It just is a thing that happened. And trying to like stay focused on just being present in the moment rather than getting into those narratives in my head is how I sort of deal with that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Like J.E. says here, contests are great, but readers are your home. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And Edith, you were going to say something too, I think.
Yeah. Well, I think something I come back to with the imposter syndrome is like, you don't have to earn the right to write. We can all keep writing. And I know that when I think about it, honestly, writing is probably the thing that's best for my mental health. Like I am so much happier as a person and so much more interested in doing other things when I'm writing and creating. So that is really freeing, and like finding something internal that's going to validate you instead of looking outward.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Andrew?
I try to keep track of what I can control and what I can't control, budgetary wise or just in my style too. So, you know, I entered with a cover that was okay last year, and I loved the cover. It was getting no play whatsoever. And I switched my cover in the middle of July, and suddenly judges were popping up out of the woodworks and saying, well, if that had been there, I'd have grabbed it off the slush pile. And I'm like, that would have been nice to know. So if you keep track of things you can control, that helps to curb when they give you critiques. When they come back at you and they say, I enjoyed the story, but it was really poorly edited. And you're like, well, I didn't hire an editor, so maybe I should hire an editor. That's something you can control, right? But you already knew that. But if you kind of stick your nose in a corner and wait for the critiques to come in, you're going to get hurt because you're not going to be ready for any criticism. But that's also the reason we do SPFBO. That's all the reason we have beta readers, is because it helps inoculate us. They're going to be a lot nicer here than Goodreads random readers are going to be. just because they're going to tell you what you need to hear, but they're not going to be trolls about it.
Mhm.
And so, keep track the whole time. We're going to do this cover contest in the next 2 weeks. Be looking at covers and marking down those artists you love so you can come back to that note later, as long as it isn't buried behind 200 other notes on your phone. Keep track of those artists you really love, or keep a sticky note like in Keep on Google, a sticky one that you can be constantly changing around, that I no longer like this artist because their style has completely veered off.
Mm.
Hey, I just found out that Katherine Graham is an editor. I should reach out to her and see if she'll edit, what her fees are. So there's a lot of things that you can control that will make it much easier for you to just brush off any criticisms you get during the competition, because you'll have seen it coming, and you're kind of waiting for that hammer to fall anyway. Yes, it's a cynical way to look at it, but it might also put a little armor on and keep you from getting shift.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, and you can go to other authors too for those beta reads and trade reads, as long as you have somebody that's not afraid to just be like, I don't understand what's going on. Like mine, this ending sucks. I hated it. Cut it off, and now it's a whole lot better ending. But so, last question, really, and if you're in the chat, I want to hear this from you guys too, because I see a lot of people still on. What are you going to be doing during the next 5 months while we wait? Are you going to be writing, drafting, editing, eventing? What should we be looking for from you outside of SPFBO?
Oh, life goes on. Yeah, I'm just going to be continuing to write. I mean, summer is always a slow writing time for me because the kids are home. But yeah, keep going.
And Edith, you re-released with new covers. I
did. I don't know that I don't actually have the new covers because I still have a bunch of the old ones. But so this is my epic fantasy series, and this is the cover I did. And I have new covers of the third book in the series. I can show that too. So this is the third book, and a lot of people thought it wasn't epic fantasy. And so a friend gave me some advice on what current covers are looking like. And so then I redid it with this cover is the third book. The other two have new ones as well, but I don't have any physicals here. Oh, I guess I have these. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
There they are.
I like that.
Yeah.
I think I saw the new. I forgot if it was that cover I really liked or if it was another one that had been recently redone for the first one. Either way, that's what drew me to it. I think was the first cover. I was like, that's really cool. I don't know what it is, but it's really cool.
Yeah, definitely. And we've got some coming in the chat. Melissa's working on the sequel. That's a good idea, actually. Mine's a standalone, but that's a good idea to go ahead and finish the sequel before your book potentially makes it as a semifinalist, and everybody's like, "Where's book 2?"
Me.
We'll be writing, going to Comic Con. Oh, I thought you said Comic Sans for a second. I'm sorry. I'm editing. People will send me their file, and I'll be like, "Why is it in Comic Sans?" And they'll be like, "Oh, it's easier to pick up typos." I believe that's an urban myth for editors, but it might work for the author's self-editing. See it?
Yep.
But yeah, going to Comic Cons and editing. How about you, Em? What are you going to be working on?
I am working on a new series. It's a very epic fantasy. It's much more epic than anything I've written thus far. It's like 120 or 30,000 words right now, and I'm like, this feels like it's only 60% written, which is a little bit worrying to me. But it's also really fun. What? Say again?
This is the way.
This is the way. I know, right? That's what I like to read. But I started out as a writer trying to write that kind of thing because that's my first love. And to be frank, I wasn't a good enough writer to kind of, juggle all of the balls of something like that. And so I shifted away from it for a while, and now it kind of feels like coming home. So I'm working on that, and I'm really pretty excited about it. Very high political fantasy with dragons and all that stuff. So hopefully in the next couple of months, I'll be finishing that and releasing that. So that'll be fun.
Awesome. And while I'm mentioning it, because I definitely want to keep up with the dragon book. If you're
Anything
wanting to follow anybody, you can go to the description box, and I have everybody's like link trees in there and websites in there so that you can follow them and see what they're working on during SPFBO. GE, I'm writing 3 first drafts. Whoo! You got it. And in June, starting edits. That's a lot.
Wow.
May the odds be ever in your favor. You can do this. You've been writing a long time. I have book 2 in the series coming out in October. Congratulations.
Congrats.
Oh, and congrats on your baby. So that's 1 month that you won't be awake enough to say his mom 2 toddlers.
Yeah, just give yourself grace.
Just be like, I'm not going to worry about books.
What are books?
How about you, Andrew? What are you working on over the next 5 months?
Way too much. I've got book 3 of the Calatian Saga, which is what's in the competition. It's coming back from my editor in a week, and then I have to record it all of June because I record audiobooks, and I'll edit it. And I just finished, tomorrow, not yesterday. Tomorrow I'm finishing the draft of a novella that I'll have come out in September. So with book 3 coming out in August/July, and then a novella a month after that, and then a whole bunch of short stories from here till Christmas as I write and finish book 4. So I'm basically milking this SPFBO big time to try to have something out every month that new review. Have you met my other book? And do the same thing, introduce your own books every time a review drops. Say, hey, great, buy my book. I have more books. Doesn't matter if they're unrelated or not. Now's your chance. The window is there, and that's what you're there for. So, I'm writing a ton.
Plan your prices accordingly.
Yeah, I barely do.
So that people can afford to buy it.
Yeah.
But I think by next June I'll be hitting 1 million words printed, which I'm excited about.
Wow.
Congratulations.
So,
That's awesome.
Yeah, but that'll be next June.
So SPFBO next year.
No, they're sequels.
Yeah, that's another.
I'll just be cheering everybody on next year.
You can't
That'll be me.
Sequel in SPFBO. It has to be first in series or standalone.
Correct.
And then, so Katie, what are you going to be working on for the next 5 months?
Well, my new book launches on Saturday, so that's exciting. And I was planning on taking a small writing break just because there's been a lot going on. But I am supposed to work on revisions for my sequel for my last SPFBO entrant last year. I'm hoping to maybe get it published by late next year. We'll see. I'm about 3/4 of the way through revisions, and then I want to send it through to beta readers soon, but it's inching towards 180,000 words, and there's still much I have to write. So it's going to land at probably 200,000 before, but I've got the cover art already done. It's formatted. It's just the interior needs work. So I would also like to maybe write some short stories this year. We'll see. There's one that I've been working on for a couple of years that I'd like to get out. Other than that, it's probably just going to be mostly revisions. Until I die. I'm trying. It's some people can just like turn out their whole thing. I'm just like for this series, it seems to be like 10 years or nothing at all. And then this one, the standalone only took a year or so to like get done. So I'm like, well, okay, that's doable. Why is it not happening with this one? So, but it's more dark fantasy and more intricate. So like we got to take our time.
Yeah. And I'm going to try to get Vanguard of Justice out as quickly as possible. It's the 3rd volume in a series. I know a lot of new people here, where I lost my entire formatted, finished draft, and my hard drive that I kept it on was corrupted. So I had to completely rewrite it from scratch. So I'm working on that and then releasing the rest of that series, volumes 4 and 5 this fall are like my most pressing bookish things, to the point where I'm like, okay, if I can absorb myself in that world I can step away from Val for just a little bit. But thank you all so much for tuning in so late at night after being up such a long day to share your expertise and your thoughts and your feelings and your hopes and dreams.
Katherine, can I put you on the spot?
Sure.
Can you pitch your book that you put into SPFBO?
Oh goodness. I'm not very good at pitching my own stuff, but okay.
Keep it short and
Now that
simple.
it's
Doesn't have to be
big.
big.
It's a new adult epic fantasy.
I think I have
that
it on my shelf.
I don't even know. We moved not too long ago, so mine.
I'll get my copy to help you out if you. Oh, you got it.
Yeah, it's a new adult epic fantasy. It follows a young queen whose world has seen no evil for over 500 years because it was banished to a different dimension, faced with the ancient sorceress who is banished, coming back to her world. And so she has to call a dwarven warrior forward in time to help her defeat the sorceress and save the world.
Awesome. You got me with time travel.
Mike, thank you for hopping on. Thank you, everybody, for joining. For those who don't know, I do keep regular indie author live chats on the channel, and I have guest indie author live reads too. So feel free to subscribe. I'm sure we'll be doing some more SPFBO lives as the year goes on. But yeah, thank you all for being here. Good luck, everybody.
Thank you, Katherine.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Nice to chat with you all.
Yes.
It's nice to chat with you guys too. Have a great rest of your day. Bye, everybody.
Good night.